We can imagine what is going through that 13-year-old mind.
It's not you who have the problem. It's the world that teaches certain isms. So that's where I feel the community has a wonderful place to step in. It's death by 1,000 cuts. It's the repeated exposure. Did you see anything troubling today on your phone? Did you see anything? Did you hear anything?
Yes, we're all talking about toxic workspaces and toxic school environments, and we know what gaslighting is, but are we using these terms correctly?
Before Dr. Harb jumps on to explain a little bit more, and I would love her to do that. Dr. Alfiee, you've explained it really nicely. And the fact that you've just highlighted that it's not girl because you have an issue or there is an issue, it's because they have an issue. And that's how you gotta try to train that mind. It's an immature mind, by the way. It's a very. Dr. Harb is saying that 13% at the age of 13 they start going on social media, and 90% are on the social media by that time. We know that 7, 8 onwards they're already interacting and they're seeing what their parents are seeing, so they're already hearing stuff well before 13 years, and we can imagine what is going through that 13-year-old mind. Dr. Harb, explain to us a little bit how we gonna, if every 1/3 kid is now gonna be threatened, bullied, how they look because they don't look similar to how a general population looks.
Mm-hmm.
How are we gonna rectify this? Where are we gonna start?
Oh, that's a $1 million question, isn't it? I think there is you can look at it from like a bottom up approach and then the top down approach, because the top down approach is hoping that systems change in such a way that whether it's putting protections in place or doing better to crack down on, like if we're focusing on social media, like hate speech that happens online, or people sort of having an filtered access to just say whatever they want to say. And I know that this gets into very bigger things like bots and, certain targeted messaging, and it goes very, very far. But we know that censure does happen on social media. We know that certain things are censored, certain things are removed. So it would be my hope that the system can respond in such a way to start censoring things that actually have negative impacts on people's well-being. From the bottom up, though, I think this is where mental health from the community level can really step in. As Dr. Alfiee was saying, it's not you who have the problem. It's the world that teaches certain isms, sexism, racism, homophobia, all of that almost gives permission for certain people to act in these ignorant and uninformed ways and harmful ways. So that's where I feel the community has a wonderful place to step in, whether it's from recognizing the beauty and cultural strength in encouraging people to know who their village is and encouraging the village to keep an eye out for these sorts of things. Because we know that everyone just says, social media is this and dangerous video games is that, but I don't think we fully understand just how impactful exposure to these things are, particularly over time. So within psychology, we have, the idea of a microaggression, which is like small, tiny little aggressions on the basis of race, ethnicity. And the phrase that was coined by Daryl Tsu, who does a lot of work on microaggressions, was it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's the repeated exposure to these things that winds up being the problem. So if we're not doing our part as the community to check in on our young people and say, did you see anything troubling today on your phone? Did you see anything? Did you hear anything troubling? Do you know that if you see something you don't understand, you can come talk to me about it? And this is not just parent caregiver. This is peers. This is teachers, this is coaches. These are religious leaders. Anyone that has a position where they can reach out to a young person and be a source of support, be a sort of an ear. I think that is where we bolster the strength of young people from the ground up. I wish there were a way that we could reach out and flip the switch and just fix the problems within social media, but I don't know if we're there yet or if we ever will be. So I see it more as the responsibility of the community. And this is something that Dr. Alfiee and I have had this conversation before. Communities of color are good at, because we're already used to being there for one another. We know what it's like to step in for one another. So I think this is something that we can also sort of speak to our coworkers, our peers, our neighbors about what it means to show up for and be a source of support for young people when they are exposed to all of this nastiness around them.
Thank you for explaining that. As we're going on to discuss this topic a little bit more, I've come across realization that you ladies know a lot about this. I'm grateful that our audience is able to hear these views and thoughts, because it has an immense impact. The way you're describing things are just exactly right on the dot. They're on the money. That's what the girls and our youth want to hear. And I know it because I'm dealing with a lot of men deal with it differently. When you girls or you ladies are explaining it to girls, it comes out completely different. And obviously I come from a background. I'm a man of color. We have a lot of issues. We hear issues amongst the community members. I want to hear, why isn't our youth reaching out as much? Why are they so boxed in and trying to fit into a society that they think, no, that's right for us, and this part is not being explored at all. So I'm going to ask Dr. Alfiee first, and then probably Dr. Harb can give us a little bit more statistics on this, or some more data to explain why is there an issue? Why is there no talk about this from our youth? Or are we not doing a good job in reaching out to them is a problem. It's not being taught in the schools and stuff like that, because it should be. Even if you have one person, a colored person, it's not that you have to address it to them. You have to address to the 90 other students or the 16 other students that they're in the class. In fact, the people who are white, or they need to be educated probably more than we need to be educated. I want to hear Dr. Alfiee first. What does she say about that?
Sure. So I think it's a couple things. One is, I think that for a lot of our young people, I was one of those young people once, there's such a desire. I mean, it's a normal, natural desire to fit in, right? Nobody wants to stand out. And what I always talk about is the more marginalized identities you layer onto a person, the more they feel pushed to the margins. Because remember, marginalization is not something that you do. Marginalization is something that happens to you. It's what other people do to make you feel like you don't belong. And right, we get it all the time. So when I think about Dr. Chester Pierce, who's a Caribbean American man who coined the term microaggressions, he literally, in the 70s, he literally was just trying to give voice to these experiences, like, right, one that many immigrant families and young people have talked to me about is when people grill you about where you're from. You're like, oh, I'm from Sacramento. They're like, no. Where are you really from? And the kid's like, California. What? I just said California. What are you talking about? And so it's this idea. I have twin cousins who grew up in Dallas and went to Ursuline Academy. I remember the stories about Ursuline and what it was like for them at Ursuline. And there weren't a lot of Black folks at Ursuline when they were there. And so I think that was my experience as a child. That's a lot of folks' experience. And so you're trying so hard as an adolescent. What is it about? It's separation and individuation developmentally, but it's also fitting in with your peer group. Separation and individuation is from your parents and your caregivers. Outside of that, it's the opposite. You're trying to blend in. I think part of the reason young people don't feel comfortable asking for help, even though, let me say this, the zeitgeist out there is everybody knows mental health terminology. Now, are they using it right? That's another story. But does everybody know it? Yes. We're all talking about toxic workspaces and toxic, school environments, and we know what gaslighting is. But are we using these terms correctly? Right? And often not always, but often not. So I think there's this desire for our young people to, in summation, to fit in. Which prevents them from asking for help. There's also so much language and conversation around mental health out there that I think it unfortunately convinces many, not all of our young people, that they've already got it together. Well, I know what gaslighting is. I know signs and symptoms of depression. I know what anxiety looks like because I saw it on TV or I saw it on social media. This TikToker taught me what anxiety is, but it's not being filtered in a way where they have an opportunity to really understand when somebody lists out these symptoms of anxiety. When we're talking to you about over 50% of the young people in our study are experiencing moderate to severe, as you said at the opening, doctor, anxiety and depression or depression. If nobody puts that in context for you, one, you think you're alone, you're the only one going through it. Two, you don't really know how to apply all that terminology that you're hearing out there in the world and on TikTok and Instagram and all these other platforms and YouTube. You don't know how it applies to you. That's for those other people out there. And so I think our job, as you said as well, doctor, we don't do enough as the adults in these young people's lives of listening. We do a lot of talking. I'm a talker, so I know I can say that. We do a lot of talking. We don't do as much listening. So I used to teach my children something I learned when they were in preschool. You got 2 ears, you got 1 mouth. Govern yourself accordingly. You have twice as much capacity to listen with those 2 ears as you have to talk. So use that capacity to listen to young people and find out what they need. And I'll yield to you, Dr. Harb, if you wanted to drop any stats, additional stats.
I was going to add that we in our study we did ask about resilience, sources of support, feelings of hope for the future, and the findings were hopeful. So I think we had like close to 53% of youth were saying that I am hopeful about the future. We had upwards of 60% saying, yes, I have someone that I can trust. And when we asked about sources of support, parents and caregivers came out on top of like, these are the people I am most comfortable going to if I need support. And that was followed by their peers and friends. And so these are good things that we're seeing. It's not that young people are saying, I have nowhere to go to. I think it's about facilitating the conversation. To follow up with what Dr. Alfiee was saying, I also feel like, and this part of this is my opinion interjected in how I see mental health in the dialect, in just like social dialect of, I think it's become so normalized, which is good because we want people talking about mental health. We don't want it to be something that is stigmatized and shunned. But I almost feel like it's become so normalized that it's no longer seen as critical as it is. So if someone says, "Oh, I'm depressed," it's lost some meaning, and that we've stopped looking for the significance of that. So in our study, you had upwards of, I think it was, and 37% of our youth who were surveyed have had suicidal ideation, have had thoughts of suicide before. That's a very alarming number. But then you see that when we look at actual youth reaching out for services, only 28% have sought formal therapy. But the number that recognize that they need it is also very high. So you have all these different conflicting sources where it's like you have clearly a crisis, anxiety, depression rates sky high, racial trauma exposure high, suicidal ideation high, but treatment engagement low. But then you also see that, no, but youth are saying that they feel comfortable going to their parents. They feel comfortable talking to their friends. So where's the disconnect? How do we bridge that? And I think that a big part of it is in facilitating the conversations, recognizing that we have to keep reminding youth and young adults that there is no shame in saying, I need help. There is no shame in saying, I'm tired. There is no shame in saying, I need a break. I cannot do this, in setting a boundary for themselves and stepping back. And I think sometimes that can be difficult being, a millennial. I'm an older millennial, but a millennial nonetheless. There's guilt associated with saying I'm tired and I need a break and I need to take a step back, because everything is so fast moving that it feels wrong to slow down. And I look at Gen Z, and I'm actually proud of Gen Z, because Gen Z are doing a pretty good job of saying, no, I need XYZ for my mental health. But I think we need to find that middle ground where we are recognizing that the need is still very much alive, but some people still do need a little bit of a nudge or a reminder that it's okay to not be okay. And I think that if we can find that, like if we can really push that narrative, I think some of this gap can be closed.
I also think one thing about diverse people, particularly when you think about immigrant families, the guilt that the young people deal with about their parents and grandparents or great grandparents saying, we came here to this country for you to have a better life, right? How dare you whine about you're depressed? You better get up and go get them books. You better get out there and get that job. Do you know what I mean? And so I feel like across generations, we have to acknowledge, that's why our research is so important. We need a young person out there, a young Native American person, to say, yeah, my grandparents and parents, they don't listen to this. They don't want to hear this. They want me to be happy all the time because I'm off the res and we're in the community and we're in it, we have a middle class home and we're doing well. They don't want me to be depressed, but I can't help how I feel. And so our job with this research, and part of why I even decided to do it in 2023 when we started, was because I just keep thinking about that one kid out there. My example is I always make this up. There's probably a Pakistani girl out there who's queer, who might be on the spectrum, who doesn't see anything about herself reflected in the literature. And I want her to have an opportunity to say, oh, there I am right there. There's my group of people right there. And there are other people who look like me, who come from a background similar to mine, who are experiencing these things. Look at this. There's like 60% of them. So I'm definitely not alone.
And I'm sure it's important to all of us. It's such a fascinating discussion. I know we're running out of time, and it's already gone over time, and I haven't even gone through half of my questions. So I'm going to probably have you...
We have to come back in the future.
I absolutely would love that. I want to hear just your final thoughts, or sometimes we have a final message to our audience.
Final thoughts are that you exist and your needs are just as valuable, just as valid as everybody else's needs, even if the spotlight has not been on them the same way that they have been for other groups. And I'm hopeful that with the way the generations are kind of going, like the younger generation coming up, that more and more attention will be paid to the needs of young people of color. But I think just to go back to that just base idea of you matter and your needs matter, and there's no shame in making noise about that, and sort of like take the space that you are owed, because that is how you work towards like better mental wellness.
I love that. So I just want to close with one thing that's really quick. For me, I really like to talk to people about the mission and vision of ACOMA, but I will only focus on one part of that, and that is the vision. At the ACOMA Project, we envision a world where every child, teen, and young adult, inclusive of all points of intersectional diversity, whether that young person is of color and LGBTQAI+, and or they have a disability. We envision a world where every one of those young people deserves and has the opportunity to live authentically and unapologetically as the best version of themselves. Because when you do that, when we give them that space, to me, what that does is create all the right ingredients for every young person to have the opportunity to rise and to thrive. That's what I want to end with.
Incredibly powerful. And thank you very much, Dr. Alfiee, Dr. Camelia. It was an eye-opening conversation. It was full of facts and your compassion and your expertise, and obviously your unwavering commitment goes a long way. It was such a great pleasure having you both ladies on the show today.
Thank you for inviting us, Dr. Khan.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
And if I can say one quick thing, I should have said this in my closing statement, is everything we're talking about getting these words out there to these young people. All of everything we're talking about is available. We make everything public. We make everything free for download so they can go see themselves. We make it pretty. It's very pretty. So we make that so that they can go access and see that they are represented somewhere. So I just wanted to say that, but thank you very much for having us.
And thank you for sharing that with us. What a remarkable journey we've just experienced together. The path to health isn't always straight, but it's always worth the effort. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take the next step in your wellness journey, armed with new knowledge and a fresh perspective. If today's episode left you inspired, share it with people, someone who need to hear this. Give us a thumbs up and your opinion. Keep exploring, keep evolving, and we'll see you in the next episode of Khan Clinics.